Hey YouTube, so I've just done a wee demo video of completely failing to manage to turn on this amp here, which is a Seriatone His Royal Majesty, which is a Dumble clone, a very expensive amp. I failed to make a sound out of it. I'm going to have to ask the owner. Some of these very expensive amps are lent to me by my pal who's mad into his amps, does it for a lot of recording and stuff like that, and he kind of runs them through. He's got several heads and a kind of rack unit thing with a big switch that switches which head you're going, which goes into a power soak thing for recording. And I've basically been sitting there for a couple of weeks because I went to download. In fact, he was at download as well, met him down there. Have you tried it yet? So I've not tried it yet, and because I was ill last week, I had COVID. It turned out I did actually definitely have COVID because I was in the studio with the Black Sabbath band last night, the night before. And Craig, the guitarist, came up to me and he's like, yeah, how's it going? I was like, I feel much better this week. He's like, I think it was the COVID I had, and he's like, aye, it was. Thursday lunchtime, I was sitting at work, started feeling a little bit shivery and stuff like that. An hour later, I was pure floored, and it's like pure. Sorry, Craig, I basically gave you COVID. And sorry to anyone else who had it as well. I think COVID, it's kind of advanced a little bit. You know, it's mutated, I believe is the word. Yeah, so it's now the variant I think is just like, it's a really bad for the shivery, sweaty, no sense of temperature thing, but it only lasts a few days and then you kind of recover from it. But maybe that's because I've been vaxxed and all that, and I've had it a couple of times. You know, I don't think it's as deadly as it used to be, but it's probably easier to catch. So instead, I'm going to turn on my Sovtek and see if it still works. This has been hanging about in the back of the shop for ages. I don't generally use it in house. This was my main amp for years, a lot of years, until I got the wee Laney. In fact, until I moved here, really, it was the only amp I ever used. With my one pedal being a rat pedal. So this time I'm actually just going straight into it to see what happens. This amp I got it on my, I think it might have been my 18th birthday. Or was it my Christmas? I had my Gibson SG, and I've had it for 20 plus years anyway. I bought it brand spanking new in a shop called Victor Morris in Glasgow. Talking to the guy, actual Victor Morris, I think it's Victor Morris's son, but I think his name was Victor as well, and he was talking about they had a problem with Sovtek, so they decided when these things came out in the 90s, they signed up an exclusive distribution deal. That'd be alright, the UK exclusive distribution deal, okay, we'll sign up for that. I think, from memory, what they got like a few samples in, you know, and then the following week he bought a guitar magazine, and there was all these other places in Britain that had exclusive contracts to sell the amps, so he just, I think, I'm not putting words into anyone's mouth, but I get it's possible, not legally binding, that basically they just went, fuck off, not doing anything, and just kept the demo models. Because when I bought this, I remember seeing this in a guitar shop in town for years and years. Well, 5 years or something like that. I think they're about mid-90s, something like that, and I probably bought it maybe late 90s, maybe 2000, 99, something like that. And they had two. They had this Sovtek MiG 60, which is this one, and they had a Sovtek MiG 100. The MiG 100 was twice the price and twice the size. It was massive. Kind of had a sort of almost Nazi look to it, you know, like in a nice, there's no way of being in a nice way, but you know, that kind of black and chrome kind of look. I mean, I don't know, you know, Nazi uniforms are, I mean, pretty fantastic looking. It's a it was the Nazis that used them, but I mean, you know, they're very striking and powerful looking and all that. And evil, I suppose. But and I bought that one. They had that. They had the 100 watt, and they had the cabinet for this. Paid 50 quid for it, brand new. It was 100 for the 100 watt one, and the 1x12 cabinet for this one, which was probably, there was the same width as the head. It was the one for this very amp. It was the MiG cabinet, but it was maybe that high, with a single 1x12, and it was 150 quid, so I wasn't going to pay £50 for that, £150 for a 1x12 cabinet. I bet you it was amazing. I'd probably buy one now if I saw one. I kept seeing that thing in Victor Morris, and it was always over 100 quid for a 1x12 cabinet. At the time, when I got that, I had what cabinet did I use? I can't even remember. I think I had an H&H 2x12. something like that. I used to take it to the studio and it was fucking amazing. So I'm going to try to turn it on, see, make sure it still works. Using the 3x12 trace elliott down there. Yeah, so this is just it, and what I was using is clean. Always felt with this amp was it's a 60 watt thing, right? I've actually got it plugged into the low input, which I think is kind of similar to the using half the power amp tubes or whatever it is, you know, it's like a half power thing, so it's actually, but I had no idea these things were desirable until I saw them on GHS pedals. In one of the videos, I think they're kind of sitting in the background and he's got a room full of these things. That's kind of bizarre. Sovtek, I should probably look it up, but then I couldn't really find any for sale. And then they reissued them for like $1,000. What? Paid £50 for it brand new. Inside it, now the reason I liked it is because it's all, it's very Soviet. It's made in Star City, which is where they made the space program. And it's just made, and it's basically meant to be, I can't remember what exactly this model was meant to be. This one I think kind of sounds a little bit like a JCM 800, but more by chance than by design. It's a similar thing like what the Electro Harmonics closed down and in America, and they went to Russia and said, can you make these big muff pedals? And they went, yeah, cool, because just after the wall collapsed and all that. Didn't collapse after it got taken down. And so they just went, yeah, we'll make you, we don't actually have an exactly 250k resistor. We've got a 242k resistor. We don't have this thing, but we've got one like this. So it's kind of like the original Marshall was that as well. It was like, it was a Fender Bassman circuit. But some of the components that were in it, the American components, weren't very easy to get in Britain. So, well, we'll use this type of valve instead. And it's the same thing. It's like, well, we don't have a 100 picofarad capacitor, but we've got a 90 one, we'll use that. And so every bit, although it's the same, every single bit's a slightly bit different, so at the end you end up with a slightly different amp. You end up with a Marshall rather than a Fender Bassman. I think that's probably the same circuit again, but instead of having the Marshall parts in it, it's got Soviet submarine and tank parts in it. So it's got, like, when you look inside it, it's all, everyone's got backwards K's on it, and it looks like it looks like a nuclear bomb basically. But it is an all valve 30 watt 60 watt amp. It's sounding kind of muffled just now, to be honest. There's a press. I always thought that this amp did not do clean, which it's kind of doing. But that's not what it's for, right? So I'm going to turn that presence back down to where it was. I don't like no. And it's all point-to-point wired as well. There's no circuit boards in it, so it's like the bottom of the valve is plugged into like a valve socket, and then there's components that are like a capacitor that goes from that circuit to the switch and all that. It's all hand wired and point to point. I'm going to try sticking it into the high input, which is basically what it gives it its sound. When you're in the studio with your pals playing, this is the sound it gets, and it's not up that sitting there with the master at 4 and the preamp at 4. Yeah, see, that's what it should sound like. That was why I used to use the rat pedal, which basically kind of made it sound like that when you were at a lower volume. But I mean, every time I've ever used this in a studio through a 4x12 or a 3x12, it just seems to absolutely kick ass. And I'm standing in front of the speaker, but it's up flipping loud. But I'm going to not use the high input. I'm going to use the low input and my pedal board just to, so it's actually usable. I think one of the rack pedal. there's probably an element of this thing's been designed to play gigs through a 4x12. Well, actually, it was designed to play through a 1x12 because it could have had a 1x12. It was made to put the snake skin on it, by the way. It comes off. I've not damaged the amp. I basically unscrewed this piece of wood, wrapped the snake skin on it. It's not glued on, and then stuck it back on again. So the snake skin does come off without damaging anything in below. It's just black behind it. It does sound a little bit stilted when playing like this at the low power mode, and I think it's just because it's meant to be played at lower volume, higher volume. You're not meant to use the low power input. You're meant to use the high input. Yeah. Also, see, model MiG 60. It says Kaduno on the front. I don't know if it's high enough res. It very much looks like it's in a sort of hand script that says Kaduno, but it doesn't actually say Kaduno at all. Those are Russian letters, so that it's not Cuduno. What it actually says is Siberia. Well, but it's pronounced Siberia or something like that. But basically, that's what it says. It's a Siberia guitar amp. And I mean, I do love it. It's the one I would gig. I have gigged it a couple of times. I didn't actually ever end up using it in Cranking House. But I did. I've played through it before. But what I did notice before when I was using it was, I tried to use it in the studio before, and I took the rat pedal in, and the rat pedal doesn't do anything when you're in high output mode. Because that's what it sounds like. It doesn't seem to be that the knobs do things, but it doesn't seem to have a huge amount of range. It's just that the one sound it does is brilliant. It's the sound I want when it's at full power. Is just exactly what I want. It does everything. It cleans up with the volume control, and if you hit it really hard, it absolutely distorts. But it's just really got that one sound. It's got an EQ and stuff, so you can tailor it a bit, but no. But I mean, it's still got the original valves in it. Well, the valves in it are Marshall branded, which makes me think that what happened was at some point in Victor Morris, when it sat in the shop for 6 years, they've swapped out the valves with something else. I've never changed them because I don't want it to sound any different than it is. It might be broken, or the valves might be broken, the whole thing might be broken, I really don't know. But the sound when you've got it up at drum volume using the high input is just the best amp I've ever played through. In the studio anyway. I absolutely loved it using it in Cranking House. I used to take that in and it was just phenomenal. Laterally, I think in Cranking House I was using the Orange, just because I like the idea of being able to do a gig and turning up with an amp rather than turning up with an amp and a cabinet. These knobs of some of them have never been turned. Enjoy your British sounds. I really don't like the noise those knobs are making. Actually. Okay, if you put it up to half, that's not the pedal. Okay, yeah, so you've really got to have the master and the preamp at half for it to come up. That's a total night and day to what it was 2 seconds ago. Now it sounds phenomenal. Part of that might be down to it just being louder, because that's one of those things that if you ever get an EQ pedal, or even an EQ in anything, or a volume control, the more you turn things up, the better it sounds. So it's like one of those things, like if you've got your amp and it's set at 5, if you turn it up to 6, it'll sound better because it's louder. But it's louder, so you've got to weigh it up. Even if you turn the guitar down, see now I'm getting a good clean sound. Try not to stand in front of the speaker cabinet. It's that cabinet there, the 3x12 I'm playing through. Yeah, so I mean, what's an incredibly desirable amp these days? I liked it for all the wrong reasons. Well, Sovtek I quite liked. I like the name. I like the fact that it's got Russian writing on the back of it. It was an old tube amp. I honestly didn't buy it. It does say on it, lead tube amp. Somewhere it says lead tube amp there. But the reason I never bought it, I remember seeing it in Victor Morris lots of times. I wanted an amp with distortion. Showed you how much I knew at the time. And it was I've talked about this the other day, the yellow Supermark paper, and Victor Morris used to put up, I was talking about my SG, and then Victor Morris used to put an advert up, and it was like saying, and it was like pure, oh, Valve amp, 50 quid. I'm like, oh, really? I've recently bought a guitar magazine and I've heard about Valve amps being good. So I went in. I think I was maybe 17 or 18. I think I went with my dad. My dad paid for it, I seem to remember. And I got it for Christmas. It was a while ago. And even though I tried it out in the shop, the guy was an arsehole again. It was the same dick with a Les Paul. Stop your kitchen. Because the thing that was annoying about it was that this supermarket, this yellow paper thing used to come out on a Wednesday, so I went in on a Thursday, and they were obviously having their great things in their offer. They wanted people to come into the shop, and I was just going in the following day and going, what's that? Same as what I did with the SG. And it was like, yeah, can I just try it, make sure it works, and stuff like that. Alright, yeah, okay. Gave me an Epiphone Les Paul like that, and it was, it had never been tuned, and it's like, can I have a guitar that's in tune? Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh, God. Fucking, there's a tuner off a fucking moany bastard. I wanted to see if the amp worked before I bought it. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, what a cock that guy was. That wasn't even the guy I didn't like in the shop. And it was just like, obviously plugged it into a 4x12 cabinet and just went, yes, I'll have that. Yes, I will. That'll do me nicely. Actually, I do remember which cabinet I bought for it. I bought it was meant to be. I used to have an old WEM cabinet, and it had a 15-inch bass speaker in it. It used to be an amp, but the amp was missing, so it was just a cabinet with a 15 in it, and it was a 50-watt speaker. And I remember we did a gig one time, and I had my pal was playing the bass, and he was using that, and he was using my 200-watt Marshall head. Plugging a 200-watt Marshall head, 200-watt head into a 50-watt speaker, do you know what that sounds like? It sounds absolutely unbelievably good for 4 minutes, and then the speaker blows up. So, and then later on, I remember, so a couple of weeks later or something, I remember having to drive to Livingston. There was a guy selling a speaker. He was actually selling two, but it was like a 15-inch blah, blah, blah. 8-shake speaker. I can't remember, 30 quid or something like that. So I went over and bought it. I was like, there we go. I was like, there's a speaker. I'm looking for the speaker. There we go. That's great. And it wasn't until I started actually taking the speaker cabinet to bits to put the speaker into the WEM cabinet, I realised, hold on. The hole for the speaker's bigger than this whole cabinet. It turns out the guy was actually selling two speakers. He was selling I think it was an H&H 15-inch speaker not in a cabinet for 30 quid. He was also selling a Celestian creamback in a handmade cabinet for 60 quid. So I didn't realise I wasn't buying the 15-inch, so I gave him his 30 quid, and it was like, yeah, okay. Like, oops. So actually the Celestian creamback's in the cabinet you can't see down there, which I actually built later on for it. Bit of by the by. But I should really try and use it a bit more, just to keep it working. You know, it's like that whole thing about just turning it on and blasting it once every couple of years probably isn't the way to do it. I should probably turn it on every couple of months and just play through it for an hour, just to keep things ticking over. Oh, that's the power supply. That's that stupid power supply again. So really what I have to do with this amp to actually use it properly is play it at volume. I'm quite amazed. I seem to remember the last time I turned it on and was really disappointed how it sounded in the house. It's that master and preamp thing. If it's not up loud enough, it's kind of a bit woolly. It needs to have some oomph to blow the cobwebs out, I think. So I'm quite happy with that as a clean sound as it's going. I've got reverb on now. Maybe turn the volume of the guitar down. I think I'm going to raise the action in this guitar. I think I've got it set too low. Yeah, 1mm action is just too low. It means I've got to play it dead softly. Oh yeah. I can't remember what the rest of that's the Crystal Maze, isn't it? It's amazing that since I just started doing that arpeggio thing, how many things I can just find that just are just there. It's like, oh, it's just an arpeggio, alright. Different tune, different key. And I even remember sitting with that amp. I started taking it to the studio. I couldn't believe it. I took it in one time. We used to go into a place called the Brill Building in town. Me and my pals used to go in on a Friday night. We were called G-Rock, and we used to drink a bottle of bucket and just play Stone songs and Beatles songs and classic rock hits, I suppose. And I remember taking it in one time just to see if it worked. And I couldn't believe what it sounded like at volume. It was like, fucking hell. I just remember Chris, the keyboard player, going, Jesus, Malcolm, I can't believe you've got that amp. And I was like, oh, no, what's that? That's exactly what you want to sound like. That's exactly what I've heard you always try to do without having to do anything with it. So I ended up taking it into the studio every week. I even remember one time sitting waiting for a taxi outside the Tron Theatre, sitting on the snow. And because I was sitting on the amp because it had been cooking for 2.5 hours when I was in the studio, so it was warm. So we're sitting there at sub-zero temperatures, and I'm just sitting on my amp because it keep my bum warm, because you know the vents where the valves are. And I remember picking it up, and there was a big bit where all the snow had melted round about it, and it's like, it's Russian though, you know. But that's still the same amp, and I've never done anything to it. I've still never. Which was one of the first things I meant to do. It's amazing how these things work. And the same thing happened when I had my Land Rover. When I got it, the front door didn't quite click properly. It did, but there was to fix it. It's like, oh, I'll fix that. And I had it for 14 years and never fixed it because I just got used to how to. There was a special knack to close it. But this one has got a similar thing. It's but I should use it. I'll use it once I've got my mega studio. It's not a lightweight thing either. But there, look at the fuse. Can you see it? Oh. Where it says fuse, it doesn't have it's got an inline car fuse in it, and it's got a bit of factory sellotape over the fuse holder 20 years ago, I bought a fuse holder because I've fixed a fuse before on an amp. I don't mind doing that. I've just never bothered doing it because it's got factory sellotape over the hole. Yeah, there you go. Oh, Jesus. Oh, sure it says something about being Star City somewhere. No, Novosibirsk City, made in Russia. It's not Star City, it's Novosibirsk City, made in Russia. Line output, 4, 8 and 16 ohm outputs and an input, that's it. And then it's got EL34 power amp tubes, all very, very Russian looking in there. Have had this a couple of times, used to have a chinchilla, and when this was my main amp back in Lenzie, and I used to sit on the top of that because obviously the valves were wrong, so she'd sit on it and warm her feet, and let's be honest, pooing it quite a lot, so I did have to clean it out quite a bit. I was like, really? But I mean, it's it's designed for. Okay, it's not designed actually for flipping heck for Russian winters, but all the parts are like kind of Soviet military spec, which is probably why it still works. I mean, I think when they went to the Ukraine, were some of those. Okay, I know a lot of the tanks and stuff, all the problems with using outdated equipment and all their tanks were breaking down and stuff like that. But those tanks were from World War II. You know what I mean? And the fact that they still worked at all and they managed to make it to Ukraine, totally, obviously not. This is I'm just purely judging Russian tanks. Nothing to do with any of the politics behind it. I don't think they should have done that. Not a good thing. Yeah, so I mean, my favourite amp in the world. I still got the temptation to say this is my favourite guitar in the world. I know I've got one hand built by a friend, which is flipping amazing as well. One that actually had some sort of design input into it, because I would never spec a guitar this over the top. You know, it's like, so what's your dream guitar? It was never going to be like, we were looking, I actually forgot to pick it up. Jen was showing me a book she'd got in a charity shop. It was 1,001 guitars you've never seen. So kind of flicking through it. It's like, fucking Yamaha C400, and it's like, that's alright, but we're just having a quick flick through. I kind of had quite a lot of the ones in it, and it was a Grateful Dead Alembic. And Jen's like, oh, it looks a bit like the Corker, and it did kinda. It was a bit more Les Pauli shape, but something. It's got a certain look of the Grateful Dead. Is it Alembic or Ibanez? Look about it. None of the bits specifically look like it, but it's just that thing where you get the totally excessive. I mean, what does one piece walnut burrow body do for tone wood? You can't do any harm, and do stuff like just the excessiveness of this guitar is fantastic. It's, if it was not even though I wouldn't bother changing it. It's 4 kilograms, which is quite heavy for a guitar. It's not heavy for a Les Paul, but it's quite heavy for a guitar. But I mean, look at the way it hangs. Sorry, that's my how you test what the neck dive's like in your guitar. None. This just sits like that. So you know, a guitar that weighs 3 kilograms but has got really neck heavy weight, perceptively weighs more than this because you're constantly holding the neck up. Whereas this one, it just sits exactly where you want it. It's got a very nice engineering thing going on about it. There's no misjudgments on it. Everything you go, that's a bit silly. Why does it do that? It's got a reason. The only thing I can't think of a reason for is the scratch plate, which my pal Ronnie absolutely hates. Every time he comes in, he just can't help but saying, that guitar is fucking amazing, that scratch plate is hideous, just take it off. And it's like, the thing is, it's not doing anything. Well, if I took it off, there'd be 6 screw holes and a lighter coloured bit. But there's not, the pickups are all routed and they're mounted inside it. You could just put pickup rings on it and you wouldn't notice. But I like it. I think it was the reason that's there is just to show off the fact that they've actually handmade out of fancy pieces of wood, because it's like, I think that's a walnut top layer, and then it's got like a sort of maple, and then an ebony, and then another maple, and then a something else layers just to make it more fancy. This guitar was somebody's dream guitar. Somebody wanted to make it as a concept to prove that it worked, that it could be done, and that neck join, which doesn't look like it should be comfy at all. It looks mental. What the hell, you want it rounded? The way this works is ridiculous. It's amazing. It's also got 23 frets. Yeah. Not 21 or 22 or 24, 23. Yeah, I'm gonna play this guitar again all day. I love it. And I actually go back last week. Look, I bought elixir strings. Used to live in elixir strings, pure loved them. Started getting cheaper ones because I didn't want to put elixir strings on Bucky casters that was selling for 150 quid. Not putting £15 strings on them. So, but yes, no, the Sovtek lives. This is a half-hour video of me just talking shit. I don't know. YouTube's such a strange thing how to do this. No, that's an absolute